There you go.
Oh.
Do it, you young, old John.
Old John.
Viruses are common in marine waters, common in salt water, infect bacteria, plankton, fish, sea turtles, marine mammals, anything. They infect everything. You can just shorten that to they can infect anything. Any living thing in the ocean. Lysis or bursting of viral infected cells spills contents and releases large amount of organic matter that can be utilized by other organisms. All that means is when a virus infects a cell, the cell bursts open and the viruses come out.
Why don't cells in the ocean shrink?
They have ways of keeping in water, and they're able to resist that. They're adapted to it. They have higher salt content inside their cells, and that kind of makes them isotonic with the salt water. It's a good question, though. There's some viruses that are found in the ocean, seen with an electron microscope. These things are so small you can hardly see them. Now the prokaryotes are bacteria, also known as bacteria, very simple cells, very small. They're a lot bigger than viruses, but they're still really small. And we actually divide the prokaryotes up into two groups, archaea and bacteria. Archaea are like ancient cells, very old. And bacteria are more common, I guess you could say. Archaea, you don't see those very often. They're usually found in weird places like real salty areas or real hot areas or down in the mud where there's no oxygen. Bacteria are more common and just found everywhere.
What makes them old?
Well, archaea just means old and ancient, and they, what we mean when we say old is that we think the first creatures that ever existed on Earth might be like archaeans, because archaeans survive in such extreme hostile conditions that that's how the Earth was in the very beginning. It had a lot, real hot oceans and no oxygen in the atmosphere, and so that's why they call them archaeans. Is they survive in conditions like we're on early Earth. All these cells are prokaryotic, means they don't have a nucleus. They just have a single chromosome, that's the DNA, that's kind of circled around in the middle of the cell. They have a cell wall. In the metabolic diversity, they can do all sorts of things. They have all sorts of chemical reactions going on in their body. Some of them can break down sulfur compounds for energy. Some of them can do photosynthesis. Some of them can do respiration, aerobic respiration with oxygen. This means there's a lot of different ways that they live, this great metabolic diversity. That's a picture of one under an electron microscope. These things, this picture shows it real big, but they're incredibly small. Somebody's estimated that on 1 square inch of your skin, there's up to 100 million bacteria. They're just covering your body right now, and you don't even know it. And these things exist in the oceans too. Now, if you're wondering how big viruses are, you might be able to fit 100 viruses in a single prokaryotic cell. So viruses are even smaller. So viruses can get inside these cells and infect them. They come in a variety of shapes: spirals, spheres, rods, rings. Rigid permeable cell wall. Normally they're microscopic. There are a few large ones that you can actually see with the naked eye. The largest bacteria ever found, you can see it with the naked eye.
What is it?
But most are real small. I think I might have a picture of it here. Like I said, wide variety of metabolic types. That was on the last slide. And very abundant. They're everywhere in these oceans. A lot of the little tiny creatures swimming around in the oceans, the single-celled creatures, eat these things. They're food. They're the bottom of the food chain for a lot of different organisms. This is the tip of a needle seen with an electron microscope. Did I move that too fast, Alex?
Yeah.
What do you need? You got it? Okay. You good? Sorry. I'm going kind of quick.
Why is it pink?
That's false color. The electron microscope sees nothing in color. It's all black and white. So they go in with a computer and falsely color it. But all the little yellow things are bacteria. So the tip of a needle is actually not sharp, is it? When you look close enough, it's got a dull point, but it's so small that it's actually sharp to us. But you can see how small the bacteria are. This is why they sterilize needles before they inject you with something, because there might be bacteria all over it. Isn't that crazy? That's an impressive picture to me. These cells of Thiomargarita nambiensis, the largest known bacterium. Cells can be 0.75 millimeters wide. The round yellowish structures are sulfur granules. The bacteria lives in oxygen-poor waters. So 0.75 millimeters, a millimeter is about the width of a dime. So these things you can see. But most bacteria would be thousands of times smaller than that. A single bacteria might be as big as that little dot right there. Really small. These are just really big ones. Here's another big one. This one's also real big. I remember reading it was found in the gut of a sturgeon fish. I got this out of another book. And it was one of the largest known bacteria. Bacteria come in all sorts of sizes. They can be round, they can be long and thin, they can be spiral. One of the most important jobs of bacteria in the marine community is to break down dead organic matter. This forms detritus, which are minute particles of organic matter available as nutrition for other organisms. Have you ever heard that word, detritus? What happens when something dies in the ocean, like a dead fish? Bacteria grow all over it and break it apart. And the little pieces that are left float to the bottom and make up some of the sludge that's on the bottom of the oceans. And we call that sludge detritus. And that's edible. A lot of things eat detritus. We'll talk about a lot of organisms that crawl around the bottom of the ocean eating detritus. Worms and little mollusks. Mollusks, not mollusks. Cold mollusks crawling around. Little sea cucumbers and stuff. Have you ever heard of those? A lot of these organisms that live on the bottom eat detritus, which is just the remains of dead organic matter. Then you have your cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria can do photosynthesis. and make their own food. They make it from scratch. Hopefully y'all have had a biology class before. You've learned about photosynthesis. Has everyone in here taken biology before? Stromatolites, massive calcareous mounds formed by cyanobacteria, have been found that are billions of years old. Stromatolites. I'll show you a picture of them when you get done writing here.
What's calcareous?
Calcareous means it's hard. It's made of calcium. The same material that shells are made out of. And the mounds are tough to protect the bacteria. We getting close? The stromatolites look like huge boulders sitting there at the bottom of the ocean. You only find them in shallow areas because these bacteria are photosynthetic, and they have to get light, so you don't find them real deep. I have to turn. This stuff you can find in your book. This look at these huge mounds here. These are stromatolites. And what the bacteria do is they live in colonies. And each bacterium will secrete a shell that's hard. And when you get trillions of them living together, it makes a big mound like this. And they absorb sunlight, the sun hits them, and they make their own food, and the calcium, the hard structures protect them, and they just grow bigger and bigger each year. The ones on the inside are actually dead, and only the ones on the outside are alive. So they kind of grow, new ones grow on top of the old ones. They grow very slowly. Hold on, I'm going to skip that page. This shows some of the different shapes. Spiral bacteria, rod-like bacteria, circular bacteria. Have you ever heard these words before? Spirillum, bacillus, coccus, streptococcus. Have you ever heard of strep throat? This is the bacterium that lives in your throat and can make you sick. It's called streptococcus. I already talked about those. I'm going to skip forward. I don't want to spend all our time just writing stuff because I got other things to show you. These are some archaeans. Those ancient ones, Trey, that you were asking about. Here you see that cell's dividing and it's breaking in two. That's what all these cells do. They divide as they grow. And this shows this picture on page 91. And goes into some of the particular detail about archaeans. One of the places you find these archaeans is in hydrothermal vents. Those real hot areas bubbling off the bottom of the ocean, you'll find these things because it's real an inhospitable environment. Most bacteria can't live there, but these can. And these things are eaten by the little worms. They're little tube worms that eat these and grow to real big sizes down there by these vents. That's anyone here ever had fugu?
Isn't it really poisonous?
Yeah.
If you eat the wrong part?
This is a Japanese puffer fish. And they have a bacterium living inside them that's incredibly poisonous. And if you eat the part of their body that houses the bacterium, you'll die instantly. And so there are Japanese restaurants that serve this fish, but the chef has to make sure he doesn't cut into that part that houses the dangerous bacterium. And there have been a lot of people every year die from fugu poisoning because the chef prepared it wrong. And so it's one of the kind of the cool things to do to eat fugu, because you're kind of risking death when you do that. You got to trust the chef. Real nice restaurants will serve it and charge a lot for it. People like to do that. Prove how tough they are. I would stay away from fugu if you ever have to order it. It then talks some about the different metabolisms. Some prokaryotes are autotrophs. That means they make their own food. And you're going to have to read this because I got to move it ahead. Whoops. Autotrophs mean you make your own food. What's it called when you can't make your own food and you have to eat something else? It's not an autotroph, it's a... I was expecting everyone to say it at the same time. It's not an autotroph. If it has to eat food, it's a... Heterotroph. Do it, Trey. Heterotrophs eat, and autotrophs make their own food. Some bacteria eat, and some bacteria make their own food. So most bacteria are heterotrophs. They have to eat, but some are autotrophs. Photoautotrophs mean you make your own food from the light. But some are called chemoautotrophs. Those get their food from breaking down chemicals that are found in the ocean. They can break apart chemicals, and energy comes out of those chemicals, and they can use that energy to make food. A lot of those bacteria, a lot of those prokaryotes that are down there at those hydrothermal vents are chemoautotrophs, because there's a lot of sulfur bubbling up from out of the middle of these cracks, and the sulfur compounds can be used to make energy. This is a graph that's showing how common these things are. So if you're at the surface, there's about 300,000 bacterial cells per milliliter of water. Do you know how much a milliliter of water is? 1,000th of a liter. It's a very small amount. For instance, this Coke bottle holds 500 milliliters. So 1/500th of this, which is probably about 20 drops of it, 20 drops of water, 20 drops of ocean water, has about 300,000 bacteria in it. So you can imagine what the population of bacteria is in the ocean from that measurement. It's huge. Archaea, there's less of those, but still a lot. Maybe 20,000 archaeans per milliliter. Which you say, well, that's not very much. It's not much compared to bacteria, but it's a huge amount compared to anything else. 1 milliliter, just 20 drops, might have 20,000 archaeans in it. That's 1,000 per drop. So these things are very numerous. And remember, viruses can infect these things, and so viruses are probably more plentiful than these are. When you go down to deeper depths, there's less of them. Maybe only a few thousand per milliliter. Okay, you don't have to. We'll talk about this next time. I need to take out some of these notes. They kind of slow us down. Those notes are just summary. I want you to do your reading. Don't just rely on the notes. Read the pages 85 through 92 is the reading tonight. And there could be a quiz on that tomorrow. Actually, through 93. Stop where it says unicellular algae.